So hi, everyone who's tuning in, and welcome to the Give Us the Punk panel here at VirtuousCon 2023. My name is Christine Pasalo Norland. I'm the founder and president of Hello Barkada, an arts and culture organization based in San Diego, California. And I'm excited to be joined this morning by artists FeliceY and Raeghan Buchanan, and Bianca should be joining us soon, each of whom are doing amazing work in the space of punk comics. As a quick reminder to everyone who's tuning in, please, if you kind of hover on the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A kind of bubble. Just tap there to drop in any questions you have at any points during the panel. And the panel will answer as many of those questions as we can if there's time remaining at the end of our conversation. So now to some quick intros. We'll start with FeliceY. FeliceY is a non-binary Caribbean American artist, wrestler, and zinester based in Boston, whose webcomic, I Need to Start a Cult, follows a musician named Junie, who bounces their ideas of starting a cult off their friend Shar because they're tired of working in the service industry. Relatable, right? And we also have Raeghan. Raeghan is an artist based in Columbus, Ohio, who founded and co-runs Poctober Art, an online gallery that features illustrations of Black and POC punk, funk, and rock musicians. She is also the creator of self-published books, Strange Glances, and the Poctober Sketchbook. And her comic, The Secret History of Black Punk, is currently available from the indie press Silver Sprocket. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. We can introduce Bianca when they join. But yeah, so I guess let's just get started. And let's start with a little bit of how is it for you all right now joining in from where you are joining in from?
How's
the weather? How's everything? Just to give Bianca a little bit of time to join.
Oh, I'm doing great. Like we were talking about, it's normal Saturday wake up late times for me. So I'm doing fine. We have I have the book release show tonight. We're gonna have a bunch of bands at a local bar, and to kind of let people buy the book, but also, kind of showcase like a bunch of Black punk bands from, our area. We have Honeychild coming down from New York. We have some of a band coming down, Being Human from Atlanta. So I'm just getting ready for that and trying to make sure that I don't forget my, box of comic books, which I know I'm gonna do to sell tonight. So I'm doing fine.
Great. And FeliceY, how's it out in Boston right now?
It is 14 degrees, which I would change if I could, but gotta learn to accept everything as it happens. But yeah, other than that, been doing pretty good. We've got a lot of snow on the ground, not a lot. We've got a lot of ice on the ground, and so I've been getting like a really good lower body workout every time I walk outside my door, trying not to slip on it. And yeah, I'm also, as you mentioned, a wrestler, and we're kind of in like 2 weeks before a big show, so been doing a lot of editing of video assets and the really glamorous and fun and exciting parts of wrestling. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good, and I've been getting some time to draw in between the day job, so that's always nice.
Yeah. Can we talk about that? So like there's your, like you mentioned, day job, and then there's your creating comics. Where do you all make the time to do everything? And then yeah, because I mean this is part of what we're talking about too, I think last night, Raeghan, too, is like it's not just making art, right? It's everything else. You gotta figure out how to take your comic books to the show. And then there's all that kind of conversation
Logistics.
too. Yeah. And I think it's really, how do you live that life? Like, how do you balance everything?
Who should go first? Do we just jump in, or?
Yeah, you can just go jump in.
I don't really I don't necessarily balance everything well. I feel like I'm constantly, like, I write things down and things like that, but I feel like I'm constantly like, oh yeah, I should do that, or like, oh, maybe I should do that. And then since I don't have a day job, I just have, like, commissions. And so if I'm not working on art, then I'm just working on other art. But sometimes I guess it's my personal art, and sometimes it's other people's arts, or like city art, murals or something like that. So I feel like I'm like a kid sometimes in a candy shop, where I'm like, oh wait, that thing that's sitting over there, I should be working on that, let me go do that. And then I'm pretty terrible with the management part. So I don't know, it's done. So that's the only reason why I'm not in trouble. But it's like, I don't know how it gets done sometimes.
Yeah, I really feel that though. Like I don't know how I did this, but like, look at me, I'm here, and like no one's yelling.
Right.
Yeah, I got really lucky with the job that I've got right now, in that I basically have like a reception desk job in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There's some cleaning and other stuff involved, obviously, but it's just like a little mom and pop kind of place, and the owners are very cool and have realized that hiring people that want to use that time at the desk for their own stuff is a great way to keep people, because it's basically like my office time. And so like they're very like happy with, like, they always kind of like to hire creative people, and kind of you walk into work, and when we're like switching off, it's like, oh, what are you working on? Like everyone's got something. So that's been really helpful, honestly, like for the last year, getting a lot of like comics done and printed and out and stuff. But the the downside to working at a job a long time and doing like an okay job is I was recently promoted to manager. Bummer. And so now that I don't have as much desk time, I'm actually thinking about moving along. But just cool news for me. I recently actually got a tattoo apprenticeship, so in June I'll be able to leave day job, and then it's going to be like Raeghan said, like you've got like a bunch of things to be working on, and it's like I'm excited for like most of that stuff to be art related in the future, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Like, oh, sorry, my bad. I don't know if it's like I don't want to interrupt.
Well, I mean, I want to kind of bring that into then the idea of punk, right? How does making these decisions, as far as how you're gonna live, how you're gonna bring in income, fit with the mentality of being punk and creating art, and still also making the income so you can survive?
It's weird because it's different now. Like, I think I read like an article, and I don't know whose it was, and I don't know where it was, but it was talking about how people use like the rising cost of everything is going to make it so that what existed in the past cannot exist as well, because you do have to worry about money a lot more than thrown in with a bunch of people. And I guess this would be a little bit younger than me, thrown in with a bunch of people, throwing in like $100 or $200 towards rent, you know what I mean? And it's not that hard to make. And then you can like go on about your day, like creating and being in bands and stuff like that. And how like the cost of everything being more is just making that like a lot harder. But I only became, you know, living off of my art maybe like a year and a half ago. So my focus has honestly been that, like making sure that I can pay rent and things like that. And so some of my personal art is like more incidental, like, or, you know, a little bit of a back burner to that. So I kind of think it's a little bit harder. But I was, during the pandemic, I actually mostly was kind of being a nanny to my sister's kids. And so I actually did have like a lot of time to do art. And then the kids were like, some of the kids were like into it too. So I was, I had helpers too. So that was pretty cool.
Love that. I feel like if someone had like sat me down when I was like 10 and been like, this is a saddle stapler, just like get this pile done, that would have been like perfect. It was something that I think like I had to grow out of. And like I was thinking about it when I was thinking about doing this panel, that like I feel like when I was younger, like in my early 20s, I mean maybe through all my 20s, honestly, like I feel like I kind of had this idea of myself as like maybe being more punk, like, and you know, I feel like a lot of that is just kind of the misconception that that means like aimless and, you know, kind of wild or whatever. But at the same time, like that was a time in my life where I was very like married to the idea of like getting a job that I would have for a while, and like, you know, kind of still very much like having this mainstream idea of like what success looks like at a job, or like to make your money or like whatever. And I feel like I turned 30 and the last 5 years have just been like the shade has been lifted, and I'm like, actually I don't why do I want to do that other than because like other people are saying it. And so when I like decided to stop pursuing a career in like a normal career, I feel like that was just like very liberating. And I think I might be living more punk now. Like I will move from job to job if it isn't good, you know. I think that that's something that like has really been maybe my best thing to learn in like my job life. Like it's not your job to get paid to like be treated badly or anything. So,
yeah, that's like a
you
weird,
know, like,
and I feel like when you get older, for sure, like, or you know, when you're like, oh well, why am I going to this place and having like another adult like yell at me? Like, I mean, I know you have to, people have to, but it's like when you don't necessarily, if you ever are not in that situation, then it's just really surreal to think that that's what you were doing, that you were like dreading going to some place where some person who's like maybe around the same age as you, or like a little bit older, a little bit younger, is like glaring at you. Like,
right. So yeah, and so, you know, I feel like there were a few jobs that I like hopped from just because it was like not a good fit or whatever. And yeah, like I said, I really like struck gold with this one though, because just, you know, you can't really get 3 hours of personal work time at work most places.
So I kind of want to put a pin on this because Bianca has arrived. But I do want to come back to this because it's really interesting to hear how the manner of living punk changes as you get older. I feel like, you know, the way that FeliceY, you're talking about it, and Raeghan, I'm like, I completely relate, because that's why I pieced out on my my previous job a couple years ago. Like, why am I being no, this isn't happening anymore. I can figure something else out. But hey, Bianca, thanks for joining.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
We'll just do a quick intro for Bianca for those who are tuning in. This is Bianca Xunise. Bianca is an Ignatz Award-winning cartoonist from Chicago who became the first non-binary cartoonist to be syndicated in the mainstream press. when they joined the collaborative comic Chix that's distributed from King Features Syndicate. And their debut graphic novel, which they're working on, I don't know, daily at this point, more than that. I don't know, can you do more than that? Their debut graphic novel, Punk Rock Karaoke, is slated to release in 2024 from Penguin Teen. So thank you for, thanks for, because I think you're in what, editing or you're doing something, because you did first round draft already or something like that, right?
I'm coloring right now.
Yeah.
I'm in the coloring phase, so.
And that's it. Joining me.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So just to catch you up as far as like where we are in our conversation, Raeghan and FeliceY were just talking about the concept of kind of living punk and having to also make an income so we could survive. But then how that's kind of changed, that kind of change concepts, like FeliceY was bringing up how, right, when you were younger, there was a different way that you thought about it. But then at the same time still had this mainstream concept of like, oh, I have to have a career. And then as like 5 years later, it's like, no, you know what? I can go to a job that works for me so that you can be closer to your art. And so I kind of want to, so let's go there because
Okay.
What does it mean then as far as like, when's your meet cute with punk? When did each of you first meet being punk or the concept of it?
Oh. I actually think, I feel like I kind of like got really like roundabouted to punk on a lot of different levels. Like I kind of found my way to Iggy Pop through like taking out a David Bowie album from the library in 7th grade, and then like I was like, oh, there's this other version of this Bowie song, and they've got a lot of friendship between those two, I guess. But so like that was kind of how I like got to like a little bit more of like classic old guy punk. And then I honestly, like, I don't know, don't kick me out, but like I feel like when I was in high school and like middle school and stuff, I lived in a very like white small town, and even though like I went to the public high school, it was like very white, but less white than when I went to the Catholic school for like elementary. So like, but it was still just like, I feel like I ended up just getting really into nu metal, quite honestly. And that was when I was like, I can just kind of be a weirdo, and these other like 6 kids that stand in this alcove in the morning also like this weird noise, so let's go. But actually, like, something else too is like I feel like my dad has always had like a really good, in my opinion, music sensibility, and so like he started me on funk really early, which I do think is like a very like hand in hand vibe. And so yeah, I feel like being able to like see like a George Clinton at 5 years old and be like, oh, like my dad likes this guy with all that stuff in his hair and wacky outfits, so like he'll be cool with me doing that too, clearly. But yeah, that was kind of like how I got around it. And then quite honestly, like I feel like the any kind of rock in my high school, you were just kind of like a weirdo already. I don't know how I managed to be in like such a preppy high school, but so yeah, it was just like, everyone that liked something that wasn't just like on the radio at the time would hang out in the same corner. And that's how I learned a lot of like punk at the time. I feel frozen.
You're good.
Okay.
Bianca or Raeghan?
I mean, for me, I think my relationship with punk kind of started through my mom trying to understand who I am, and just kind of like my natural androgyny growing up. Like my mom would call me Ziggy growing up, and like Alice Cooper and what's the other one? Euromedic, she would call me Annie Lennox and things like that, because I was always kind of wearing my brother's hand-me-downs and things like that, and just these things she would call me from like her generation, it like encouraged me to kind of go look it up. And it kind of started through there. Both of my parents were a part of like the Chicago club kid scene. So I kind of just, I'm sort of just like second generation Chicago club kid, and they kind of just passed the information on to me. And even though like it was a little weird because my parents got divorced when I was very young, and like my mom turned to Jesus as for therapy for that divorce, and she kind of threw all of her records away and kind of like was like, this is the devil's music, blah blah blah. Yeah. But she also like had this like weird thing where if the music was from the past, it was okay, but if it was current music, it was bad. It was the devil. If it was from the past, it was fine with her. Yeah, that was cool. So all I had was oldies. So growing up, I was kind of just raised a generation behind from all the other kids, and I like so desperately wanted to know what the other kids were talking about, but it was only current music I knew was Jesus tunes, and then punk music and new wave and goth music and things like that. But yeah, that's really kind of my relationship to it. I grew up South Chicago, like I grew up around like all Black people, Black and Latino neighborhood, and so I was just corny. Like it wasn't just like, oh, you grew up around white kids and that's why you like this. It's just, I was just corny. That's what happened. And like I'm okay with it. Like I remember they put up a Fifi Dobson poster in my high school that she had this Got Milk ad that she had done in like 2004. And she's like jumping and she's got the milk. And I remember my bully was like, oh, that's what you are. You dress like that. I get it now. And I like stopped getting beat up for like a week. And then the beatings began again. But it like helped like the other kids to like get it, because they were like, I don't understand why you're doing this white shit. Like I don't, you're Black. Like get it through your head. And I'm like, I know, like Black people invented rock and roll. I don't understand what the problem is. And it just wasn't computing. But whatever, I got tough skin now. Yeah, it's just kind of my upbringing. But yeah, it's really came from my parents. I wish I had that photo of them. I like posted on my Instagram, but it's kind of far gone, of them together. There's this really cool picture of my parents, and they're all like 80s and laid out like on a couch. My mom's got like Cyndi Lauper hair and stuff. And
yes.
They were just some weirdos, and so they couldn't. Cyndi Lauper was another one where my mom was like, you use your anger through this, you know. But yeah, it was a family affair.
I guess like for the way that I came into punk was my brothers. Like I was I'm a middle child, and like so what my brothers did, I wanted to do everything my brothers did. And so I have a brother that's like 11 years older than me, and he left home when he was like 16. He like ran away to like Pittsburgh and started a punk band. And so he would just send us like stuff home to Erie. So I know there's like this mixtape, and so I'm like 11 and I'm like listening to like Discharge and The Exploited and like Poison Idea and DOA and stuff like that. So they just sent, that's you know, and then he would always write letters on the back of like punk flyers and stuff like that. So I'm like 11 and I'm listening to hardcore, but there's nobody around me that like my age that could possibly care about any of this stuff. And that wasn't the only thing that like I listened to. I know, like, I don't know when I bought my first like music, but I know what it was. Like I know at the same time I bought Blackstreet and the Clash Combat Rock. Those were my first tapes that I bought or whatever. And so as far as like people like around me, there just wasn't I remember like doing like Girl Scouts, and like we had to like make up a crossword puzzle. And so like all the regular girls are like, you know, kitty, that's the answer, puppy. And I'm like giving them clash prompts, which is then making people, I was bullied at my Catholic school, and that was making people think that I was even weirder or whatever. So that was, then I got, because they didn't like my hair, so I got bullied a lot for that. And then I was just being weird, so that or whatever. But to be honest, when I was in high school, nobody really bothered me about liking punk at all, because I remember having it in my earphones and people would be like, "What are you listening to?" And I'd be like, "Oh no." But it would be like, I feel like people thought I was listening to like Bad Religion and stuff like that. Or I'd be like in chorus class, like playing like Green Day on the piano. And people are like, "Oh, you can dance to this. I like it," you know? So I definitely have a different experience. Like I'm sure people may have like ignored me as opposed to like being bullying, but I was also really weird because I would wear like a Clash shirt and bell bottoms. So I didn't know what I was doing or anything like that in high school or whatever. But yeah, punk I got into through my brothers. The same way as comics. I wanted to be, when I was little, those things were associated with boys. And when I was little, I thought I was a boy. And I wanted to do everything that boys did. So, which I still do. So, but everything's opened up. Things are different. The way everybody refers to everything is different now. But I definitely remember going to comic book conventions and being treated like a little girl, like condescended to and things like that, which was tough. But like, you know, I got through it.
Yeah, sorry. So there's a storm here. So my power went out for a minute. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?"
And then
Well,
I
they're
just
in
walked through it.
But I was like, you know what? They're in it. So I think we'll work it out. So you're all talking about comics, and I mean, did we go through how you each then moved into getting into comics, and then how did you start infusing your ideas, knowing that they're kind of, a lot of them are kind of based in punk? How did you bring the two together?
I mean, I started making comics in middle school, and I felt pretty punk about it because like I wasn't mass producing anything. I don't know if that's obvious in my 6th grade wisdom, but we would like hand it around and like, you know, kind of like when someone like has like a weird like cool thing to show, like everyone's like, "Oh, let me read it." And like I got in trouble because it was good enough that it was a disruption. And that felt like a level of success that I was happy with at the ripe old age of 10 or whatever. But like for me, like I almost feel like comics is like how like punk is for Bianca, like where you got it from your parents. My dad liked comics, and so like I kind of always had this idea that like comics were like a cool thing. And like when I was little, I was born in Jamaica. My dad's Jamaican. He still lives down there. He would like spend a really like kind of ridiculous amount of money like in the 80s getting heavy metal subscriptions mailed to the island, which was just like a problem. Like, and eventually he found a bookstore that was willing to do the heavy lifting, so he just needs to like go and buy it. But he like kept all of them, and unfortunately they got wrecked in a flood. But like I got old enough to get like handed the box of them like before that happened, you know. So that was a really like cool introduction to like that comics could also be like a little bit like messed up. And like when I was very young, like if I was sick at home, my mom would usually like bring just like an Archie comic or something back from like the corner store to like keep me occupied while I was like on the couch. So yeah, I've kind of always like been around them and appreciated it. And I think that, you know, for a kid with undiagnosed ADHD, like a bunch of pictures is like what I'm gonna read and not not go for something else, you know what I mean? So like I always thought it was like a pretty perfect medium, because you could kind of like really read it, or you could just kind of look at the pictures and like pretty much guess what was going on. And then like it's two stories in one, because when you read it and realize you misinterpreted something. No. But yeah, and then I honestly like when I was like after college and like, you know, trying to have like a real job, like I stopped doing comics. And then I don't know, then I just like realized that was stupid. And in 2016, I started up again. So and yeah, with as far as like the punk thing though, it's like, yeah, I just feel like it's really easy to write about the stuff you know. And like then there's also the part of me that's like, I wish I had seen like people like me in comics when I was that age. So like it, while I don't think it's like my like goal in life is to make comics that I like making and I hope other people like, but like there is a part of me that is driven to like make comics that like little queer Black kids will pick up and be like, oh yeah, like that's literally me, or you know, whatever. And I feel like Junie is like so Junie is the main character of my current ongoing I need to start a cult story. And I feel like Junie's a musician almost like because I'm not. It's kind of my like, this is my like fake being in a cool band, because I don't have time for that. But but I have time for karaoke and to write comics about someone who's in a successful local band. So like that's cool. Oh,
Bianca or Raeghan?
Well, what was the question again?
Was how did you meet comics? And then how did you really start infusing it with like had the infusion of using putting your punk in comics been there all the time?
Oh yeah, I agree with FeliceY. I think it's like kind of just like it's easy to put them together, because it's all from like it's all everything people say is DIY now, but like but it was at some point not always like that. And punk rock was like one place where they were like DIY is like obviously that's what you do. You have to create your own scene. You have to like create what you want to see in the world and things like that. But again, the same thing with music. My brothers were collecting comic books. There was a comic book shop around the block from our house. So you know, it was something like, you know, getting bullied in grade school, you know, Wednesday comes around, you take a trip to the comic shop and you escape into another world for 20 minutes. And that's like the time that you like that you feel good about yourself. And then you realize like, you know, I had notebooks and a pen, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, you start to make like little comic books. I think one of my first comic books was like literally watching my brother Courtney like do this in notebooks and then just like kind of just copying off of him, you know what I mean? Because I'm sure they were always like, get out of our room, like stop copying it. Why are you do everything that we do or whatever? But like, so that's kind of how I started. So it was just like, because I always think that like with me and art and stuff like that, it's the same as like everybody, they gave you crayons and you liked crayons. And then eventually people put the crayons down, but I just never put the crayons down. That's how I feel about kind of that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Oh boy, that's a loaded question because there's like so many different avenues of our existence, because like it's almost like defining your punkness and defining like why you create is almost like trying to like define being Black. It's just like I am what I am, and it just I just do, and I don't really like didn't really like think too much about it when I was started doing it. It just came naturally to me. It definitely again was like another family affair. My mom had ambitions of being a comic artist for Mad Magazine, and then she decided not to do that anymore. But she still like draws in like that weird underground sort of art crumb style, and that's how she would draw our chore list. Like she would draw us doing our chores, and then she would tape them to the kitchen cabinets. And when we would wake up on Saturdays, we would be like, oh great, like here's our chores, but it like softened the blow. And I think that's what I learned from her, was how to give information that people don't want to hear, soften it through illustration. And that's kind of my process through my comics, is I give people loaded information and then soften it through illustration. And so that's one way about it. But also similar to Raeghan, I have like two brothers, they're both older than me. And they were really into Cape comics. So they were reading X-Men and things like that. And I remember like the Jim Lee era of X-Men, and I remember like being like really excited to read like the end of the X-Men comic, because like I didn't really care about the fighting part. I was like, boo, boring. But like when they would just hang out at the school, and it was just like drama and like relationships, and there's this one comic that like will forever be burned in my mind, where they're eating pancakes, and then they get like frozen, and they're all like, oh, our pancakes, why did you freeze them, and things like that. And like what's it, Gambit like comes into the door and he's all wet and his shirt's tight, and like
Of course it was.
that was like my favorite thing. And I would read that issue over and over again, and it was like I was just really, I just love the slice of life. I was really interested in slice of life stories. And later, like I eventually became brave enough to go to the back of a comic book store versus just like the front that has like Spider-Man and Superman and all those guys. But then if you go to the back, then there was like Ghost World and what is it, Optic Nerve and Love and Rockets and things like that. And that's when I was like, oh wow, like especially with Love and Rockets and Optic Nerve, it was like there was people of color, and that was really exciting. And so I started just like gobbling those things up. I started making zines when I was in junior high. I used to cut up Delia's like catalogs and like have them be my characters, and then like glue those together. And I would like try to trick my teachers to let me do it for homework assignments and like book reports. So I could like make a zine for a book report, and they're like, whatever. So just give me more work to do. I always needed more to do. But yeah, there's just like so many different ways of doing it. And yeah, similar to what FeliceY was saying earlier, just like you kind of write about what you know. So I just talking about punk and things like that in my work is just because what I'm interested in. And my hope is to meet more people like the people that are in this panel right now, and just meet other people who kind of share this journey. Because even though we know the truth that, you know, rock and roll was, you know, invented by Black people, like the first DIY shows were happening on plantations when the master was asleep. Like, let's be real. But at the same time, when we enter these spaces, they're very Caucasian. And it was kind of like a lifeline of like hoping to find other people that look like me, that share my beliefs, but also just like share my skin. And also just for the next generation to see it. Because even though it was exciting to read things like Love and Rockets and Optic Nerve, it still felt like, you know, there's like hardly any dark-skinned people in Love and Rockets, like every once in a while. And sometimes when you see dark-skinned people drawn in comics, it's like, this is borderline. And so I just wanted younger kids to like see things and like see a positive image of themselves that isn't sort of laden with this new thing that's happening now where it's just like if we present a Black character, they also have to carry like the entire Black struggle on their shoulders. And that's kind of weird. I not to go on a tangent, but I watched Jumping Jack Flash for the first time like 2 days ago. And I was like, wow, what a novel idea of having a Black character go through this adventure. And like her Blackness is a part of her character, but it isn't like the plight of her character. It's just like Whoopi Goldberg's Black. She's undeniably Black. You see her, you see a Black person. There's no confusing her for anything else. But at the same time, it just like wasn't like, uh-oh, don't get shot by the police. Oh no, were you not allowed to use the bathroom? And it's just like, it's 2023. Like I want, with the story that I'm working on, Punk Rock Karaoke, they're Black, they grew up in the hood, and yet they're still like happy kids. Cause like I grew up in the hood and like I didn't, like I knew I was in the hood, but I also like found joy in my day to day. And it wasn't like this sort of after school special. It was just my life. And I just want to show Black punk kids just living their life without sort of through the white gaze of suffering, constant suffering.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
About when Bianca was talking about the comic books that they was reading for the slice of life stuff, it is kind of funny because it just made me think like, because the comics that I read when I was younger were like, I was reading like, I started collecting comics when they started doing like they did the Sandman, like the second run of it, like sequentially, or they put them out again, like as if it was from the beginning. And I was reading Preacher, I was reading stuff like Gen 13, and I never read like hardly any superhero comics. Like I read some anti-hero, like I read Spawn and stuff like that, but and Venom. But when Bianca said that, that made me realize that like that was like I really did enjoy that part of comics. Like like in Gen 13, that was like they had superpowers and stuff like that, but it was kind of like Archie, you know what I mean? They're like hanging out and like joking with each other and teasing each other and getting into adventures, but it was really like they were like high school kids, you know? That was kind of cool to hear. I never thought about the stuff that I was reading in that way.
Yeah.
I actually like, I feel like a lot of like the earlier comics that I like really like identified with and like kind of gobbled up in like middle school and high school were kind of the same thing, like more like slice of life. I now have like a really deep appreciation for the X-Men, and like my first favorite superhero though was She-Hulk, and it's because she broke the fourth wall and was a lawyer, like, you know what I mean? But like I feel like there were just I was really lucky to have like a pretty solid public library in my town that I could walk to. So like it was always there for me. But then probably honestly, when I was in middle school, they got like the most amazing, like fresh out of college YA librarian who like gave a shit. And so like after she started, like she obviously liked comics because like the like graphic novel wall just like grew so quickly at that point. But like it was also, you know, kind of like combining punk with comics. In high school, if I skipped school, I usually just went to the library to draw with my best friend and like read comics. And the librarians were like really kind about turning a blind eye. No one ever called a truant officer. And, you know, it's kind of like Bianca said, like, can I do a zine for a project? It's like, sure, give yourself more work, you little weirdo. Like no one was mad that we were in there like doing things that were productive, I guess, you know. I got out of writing a few papers by doing like 1 or 3 page comics for stuff too, which like
I did comics for my high school stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to, I love this conversation and I wish it could keep going and going and going. But we do need to eventually clear the stage for our next panel. So in this, as we start wrapping up, how can I've included each of your IG handles in the chat, but where else can people tuning in continue to follow you after today's panel?
That's all I do is Instagram. I have a website, Peppermint Raeghan, like the gun, .com, but I only have an Instagram. I can't really handle social media, so it's just the one.
And FeliceY?
I'm also predominantly on Instagram. And I'm sure that you've got the one that is all my art stuff. I do also wrestle in a pretty like queer punk wrestling league locally though. And if you want to follow wrestling, I am Calypso.Apocalypto, I think. But if you look up Boston League of Wicked Wrestlers, just, shameless plug, it is a really lovely and wonderful bunch of people who like to consensually beat each other up. But yeah, check out Boston League of Wicked Wrestlers. I'm probably somewhere on the website. And if you're in the Boston area, we have a show coming up on March 12th, and it's going to be pretty silly. If you like wrestling, you'll like it. If you like queer people, you'll like it. If you like Black people, you'll like it, because we have the Black Circus coming and doing our halftime show. But yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty dope. But yeah, I comics is kind of like my true love, and then like wrestling is my like friends with benefits buddy.
And Bianca?
Just when I didn't think you were even any cooler, I found out you're a wrestler. That's awesome.
My low back is trying to make me stop, but
I know, right? Man, we have the worst bodies. Cartoonists, everybody stretch. Like, it's so important. Everything is at Bianca Xunise. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and there's like a dead Facebook. You can go if you're of that age range that likes to be on Facebook. And that's it. Like, unfortunately right now, like my stuff like isn't being updated because I hate tap dancing. And so I haven't really been performing as a good little social media kind of way. And I'm also just deep in the book right now, so I just can't, I just put my phone in the other room because I just can't. But yeah, I'm not on TikTok yet, but I know that my publisher is gonna hold a gun to my head and say so I will be there soon, but I'm holding off as long as I can until I have to.
I feel like my greatest fear is me on TikTok.
So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to Bianca, FeliceY, and Raeghan for making time this Saturday, because I know you all have some busy schedules, to be part not only of this panel, but to help kick off VirtuousCon this weekend. Also, big thanks to Cerise Murphy and the amazing VirtuousCon team for setting this entire platform up, and for providing this virtual event for the last 3 years now. Thank you to Quid, who was our tech manager today. Thanks for dropping in quotes and whatnot. And don't forget that this is just one of several panels that's happening over the weekend. So please make sure to check out the program on virtuouscon.com for this room, which is Dwayne McDuffie room, but also over in the Octavia Butler room. And then in between panels, please make sure to go visit the vendor floor show by clicking on the floor show links in the chat, and all over on the website. I think there's multiple floors of vendors, so go check out those indie creators and support. With that, I want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. There were some questions. We'll answer them offline, and I'll share the responses on the @HelloBarkada IG. But until then, have a great VirtuousCon weekend.
Thank you all. Thank you
Thanks
for having us.
joining.